By way of hands, put it up high if you're in a relationship of significance. If you're married, if you're living with someone, cohabitating, if you're even dating with a sense of monogamy or an expectation of it. So a good. Now keep your hands up. Keep your hands up if you're cheating on that partner as we speak. Well, firstly, let me thank the TEDx organizers for assembling the most faithful audience I've ever had a chance to speak in front of. So that's wonderful. But really, you guys just demonstrated something quite important, actually. You demonstrated the difference between a declared reality and a revealed reality. And so there's this notion out there that unfaithfulness is something that just doesn't exist. But there really is a big gap between that declared reality and the revealed reality. And why that's important for two real reasons. One, if you're an entrepreneur, which I guess I am, there's a great economic opportunity that can come from filling that void between the two. And secondly, if you do successfully fill that void, you have a chance to potentially reshape society's thinking because of that gap that's now been exposed. And so in a traditional marketplace, you guys might all recognize this supply and demand graph behind us. It works a little differently, right? Usually we can take a marketplace, and one that's germinated the last couple of years we all saw was cash for gold businesses. I don't know how many people have noticed those when they drive through a mini mall or whatever it ends up being. And the reason that is because gold prices have gone up over the last couple of years, and there's a business to be had, so many people gravitate towards it. But what if that price for gold was invisible? What if it just wasn't known? It was a secret. Would people venture into that market? Probably not. But one enterprising man or woman might. And he or she might make a lot of money from it, but then also become an expert on the topic. And so that's really what Ashley Madison has become. Yes, we've generated a lot of wealth from creating this business, but we've also created a lot of data, a lot of really interesting data. And that's part of what I'm here to share with you guys today. But before I get to that, I think it's also critical to understand how did this all start? Because I'm asked all the time, where did this idea come from? How do you fill that void, right? And like any other overnight sensation or light bulb moment that goes off, there tends to be a foundation. So my foundation was the movie Jerry Maguire, I guess, right? My foundation was actually that my dream job was to be a sports attorney. And I became that sports attorney. Unfortunately for me, I wasn't the Jerry Maguire of North America. I became the Jerry Maguire of Lebanon. My job, truthfully, was to take our ex-NBA clients or players who couldn't make that league and find them jobs overseas. And so it was an interesting career path in that, yes, I had to find cultures where they could succeed in. I had to find team chemistry that they would work in. I had to negotiate contracts. But I also had to deal with a lot of domestic issues that went something like this. Phone call in the middle of the night. Yeah, what's going on? What's wrong? I have a huge problem. My wife wants to come visit me in Italy. Well, what's the problem with that? My Italian wife is not going to like that. And I would literally have to explain to them that you're not supposed to marry someone just because you're 10,000 miles away, right? But that is the reality that went on. And so that foundation needed to be in place, I think, for me to be able to fill this void that we talked about. So why on this day, this very day, is Duke University, Michigan State University, the University of California at Irvine, NYU and Georgetown all working with Ashley Madison to study our users? Why are they doing that? Well, I think it's two reasons. One, we're a decade into this, more than a decade now. We have 17 million members in 26 different countries and 9 different languages. We sign up more than 20,000 people a day. So we have an extraordinary amount of data access as to people looking to have affairs. At the same time, these traditional researchers are taking a look at how they have conducted studies to date. And the challenge is it doesn't map very well. So traditionally when you study things, you look to your undergraduate class. They're kind of confined and they'll volunteer whether they like it or not, right? And so, but are they really a great group of people to study and map to a 20-year marriage? No, they don't really coordinate well with an infidelity marketplace. And so when an anonymous service like mine comes along and can provide you literally millions of lines of communication that take place on our servers every day, that's really robust data. And so that's the data I'm here to share with you today, the cyberanthropology, we like to call it, of infidelity. So the question I'm asked more than any other, and that's the first one I want to answer for you, is who strays more, men or women? And I can tell you uncategorically one thing for sure. Women ask me that question a lot more than men. And I think they ask it because intuitively they know the answer, which is right behind you, which is yes, men do behave in this way more often than women. But there's a big, big but. It's very age sensitive. It's very age sensitive. Now, I can't tell you what was happening in 1960 or even in 1860. What I can tell you is what's been happening on our service since 2002 for the last decade. And what we see is there's an ageification. So when you look at 30-year-old behavior patterns, they do match up pretty evenly between men and women, but it dramatically changes as you get older. And there's a funny anecdote I like to share with people, because I don't always get it right either. When we first built this service in the early days, I remember getting a phone call from an irate member saying, "Nobody can find my profile. I know this because I built a female profile and I did a search and you can't find it." And I'm like, what is he talking about? We looked high and low, we finally figured it out. We had only built the search engine up to age 65. We had forgot about what we affectionately now call our Viagra generation. We didn't even allow for searches beyond age 65, and this gentleman was 72 years old. Could not be found in our database. But now we literally have tens of thousands of those members. They tend to all be male. The other important thing if you're going to study something like infidelity is understand what I've come to have to defend many a time, which is that people want to say to me, "Noel, you're marketing infidelity. You're convincing people to have affairs." One of the reasons I've probably been asked to only speak for a few minutes here today is because if you gave me an hour, I'd convince you all to have affairs, right? That's how persuasive I am. But that's nonsense. We all come to intuitively realize that. So what's really important is to understand the psychology, the psychographic we call it, of what brings someone to potentially have an affair. And we found it really interesting, so interesting in fact that I thought we had some sort of technical glitch, that we had 4 times as many 39-year-old users as 38-year-old users. But then it dawned on us, what's going on here? Well, maybe some of you have recently had a 40th birthday, or maybe it wasn't that long ago, or maybe you're on the verge of having a 40th birthday. That's one of those times when you calibrate your life. You take a look around you when you're 40 and you wonder how you're doing within your community, within your family construct, within your career path. If it doesn't feel right, we call that a midlife crisis. You do a lot of things about it. Some people go and, have hair transplants. They get, reconstructive surgery. They also go and have affairs. And so 38 and 39 are very different behavior patterns from a psychographic perspective. And we see that manifest in a number of interesting ways, including on an annual basis, the day after Valentine's Day, the day after Mother's Day, the day after Father's Day, and the day after New Year's are the 4 busiest days of the year on Ashimas and year in and year out. On any given week, the busiest day, can anyone guess when that is on my service? Far and away? Monday morning. Not because of the advertising campaigns I'm running on NFL football games on Sundays. I don't do any of that. I'm not allowed to do any of that. It's because the weekend was full of expectations that didn't get met. You were hoping to have intimacy, love, and affection from your partner. That didn't happen. That's the last straw. And that's how infidelity plays itself out. It was also interesting to us to look at the data that came down in the last, assembly by the U.S. and Canadian governments around the StatsCan side on interracial marriages. There has been an incredible proliferation of it where you could almost call the color blindness effect that's going on, which is a great thing for everyone to see. And I was curious, and so was Michigan State and a couple of other institutions, as if that affair kingdom had that same effect, and if maybe people were even more likely to explore an interracial encounter with a more casual relationship, although I question whether an affair could even be classified as something more casual, but it turns out they can. So almost 33% of our users, a third of them, are interested in pursuing and do pursue interracial affairs versus the marriage rate being, just under 10%. What was also interesting was some of the highlights we found of that. For example, black males were twice as likely to pursue an interracial affair versus their female counterparts. And Asian women are 3 times more likely to pursue interracial affairs than their male counterparts. And the most colorblind city in North America, Atlanta, Georgia. 91% of the affairs being pursued there are with people of different race. On an annual basis, we look at professions and the professions that take a path towards infidelity, and it's kind of that classic nature versus nurture question, if you will, which is it the profession, the environment, that leads people to have more affairs? Let's think about politicians for a second. Or is it, the personality type? And like any other nature versus nurture question, I think it's a little bit of both. I do think there are professions out there. You can think of the military or physicians, nurses that deal with death on a regular basis. I think those people, because of that environment, might be more predisposed to not remain unhappy for as long as other people might, and so therefore might jump into something like an affair. But for the most part, what you're seeing, let's talk about these politicians, is a personality type, right? To become a successful politician, you have to be a risk taker. You got to be comfortable taking risks. That's partly how you got there. Is it any wonder why then that it translates to your personal life? You tend to think that you can take those same personal risks. At the same time, I assure you, politicians are fraught with a lot of temptation. Call them interns, if you will. Call them fans, whatever you want. They're also traveling and away from their partners for an extended period of time, and that's difficult, as the former speaker was just talking about, in addition to that. So the environment that they're in leads to that behavior pattern as well. So really, when I stand back for a second, and I think it's pretty easy for all of us to sit there and maybe look at Ashley Masson and want to plug our nose a little bit, but I would be standing here in front of you to try and argue the opposite, that the positive societal benefits of creating a service like this are a multitude. The economic one is clear, right? I employ hundreds of Canadians. I pay millions of dollars in taxes. Those are all interesting positive benefits to society. The secondary benefits that we could talk about include the fact that singles dating sites now probably aren't as overrun with married people as they were before I created this environment. Right? The workplace might not be as full as people getting unfair promotions because people tend to choose their lovers on my servers versus in their cubicle next to them, whatever it ends up being. But coming back to our notion of home and what we started this conference and what we're talking about, which is, I think we all know that we have an unfortunate trend going on in our society, which is every social scientist will tell you the same thing, that children raised in a two-parent household have less challenges around drugs and alcohol use, more opportunities around higher education, less problems with the law. But yet, the numbers speak us moving in the opposite direction. There are more and more children raised in single-parent households. And so part of what we hope we can get up with this tertiary benefit of creating Ashley Masson are these incredibly robust data sets, which can be shared now with really bright people in really great institutions who might be able to help us formulate, why do we have these affairs? Why do we let these relationships come undone? What is the causation behind it as opposed to treating the symptoms? And so if you stand back for 1 second and look at this business and what it has accomplished, I think our biggest legacy could end up being that we help society recalibrate who we are and how we function within the home life. Thank you.